Thank you guys all for coming today. I know it's the end of a work day heading into the holidays, so I really appreciate your time. My name is Annelise. I'm the regulatory coordinator for the CTSI, meaning I help keep the CTSI and all of us who benefit from it in compliance with the NIH per our funding requirements. I'm really excited to be talking to you today to discuss the NIH's public access policy. And this policy is what our CTSI users are required to comply with. And there's been a little bit of change regarding it this year. So we thought this conversation would be really great just to get everyone on the same page. The presentation, like I said, is being recorded. It'll be published online for you to refer back to, and I'll also make sure all the slides will go out to everyone who registered today. Um, the presentation itself is mostly geared towards CTSI users, so people who use our different cores and services, also geared towards CTSI cores and service providers and members, and really just anyone who might find themselves wanting to learn more about the updated public access policy. So the overall goal is just to communicate expectations that authors must comply with when they utilize our services or our funding awards. So I hope that this info session will help promote some funding transparency, continuous compliance, and commitment to best practice. Thank you to those who submitted questions in advance. I did my best to make sure that they were addressed kind of throughout the different slides. Additional questions can be saved for the end, or if it's super pressing, like I said, just hop off mute because I can't see you guys right now for some reason. And I'll do my best to answer all the questions. There's a lot of ongoing conversation and changes and various updates coming out right now regarding a lot of this material. So if your question requires some additional research on my end or pointing you to a different expert, I'll be sure to do that as well. I want to acknowledge that some of this information here might be what you already know, some of it might be totally new, so bear with me if you fall into the former category. Okay, so let's move on here. So why the strong tie between the CTSI and the public access policy? For those who don't know, the CTSI, or the University of Utah CTSI, is one of 66 different hubs or CTSIs across the nation at different universities that is annually funded by the NIH's NCATS CTSA program. And because of this relationship, all of the amazing research that utilizes CTSI services is required to be submitted into PubMed Central, or the resulting publications of the research are. Sorry, did I miss something? Okay. All of the publications that result from the research is required to be submitted into PubMed Central. Different from PubMed. PubMed Central is a free, full digital archive managed by the National Library of Medicine. It's open to everyone. It's just a great way to disseminate taxpayer funded research. So compliance with the NIH public access policy is crucial for us at the CTSI because, well, for one, it just ensures that the public and patients and researchers can get immediate and free access to health research, which fosters clinical advancement, transparency, and just overall better health outcomes. So that's great. We're always on board and want to support that. On the flip side, non-compliance with public access policy and ultimately non-compliance with the NIH can halt or delay our grant funding here at the CTSI. And of course, we don't want that to happen. Neither do our users. The CTSI is able to provide excellent research support because of the amazing awarded funding from NCATS. So that's something we're never wanting to jeopardize from something as simple as, a small non-compliance issue that can then grow into something bigger. So in the current federal landscape, 100% compliance is needed from CTSI users on this front. The federal government is very closely reviewing all grants, and we've seen that even small compliance issues can result in a loss or delay of funding. So as such, any publication that has already used CTSI resources must be in compliance, and we're happy to help anyone who needs assistance with this. You can message me or we can talk more about that after. Um, but on a bigger scale, this isn't just a CTSI issue, at an institutional level, any publication stemming from NIH funding must also be in compliance. So this is nothing new. Um, in case there's any confusion or question as to what constitutes utilizing the CTSI in your research, here's some examples of the cores and their services that the CTSI provides to investigators across the institution. So if you've ever used our Triad core, they help with study design, survey design. If you've used REDCap or Open Specimen, or if you have Encore as part of your study, Epic Research, these are all different CTSI services, whether that's apparent or not. Some additional ones, the Cellular Translational Research Core. We have great resources for community and stakeholder engagement. We have career development opportunities for our more junior researchers, and of course, funding opportunities in the form of short 1 to 2 year awards. So there's a lot that we do here at the CTSI. We love helping out our researchers. If you have any questions about our cores and services, you just Google CTSI cores and services. We have an awesome page that kind of goes into more detail about what's available. So when we're talking about keeping our investigators compliant with the public access policy, we at the CTSI kind of created this little program or just it's a program called Cite and Submit. We have a whole page on it on our website. It's a 2-part process. It's really simple. Both are required if you are going to be using any of our services or be awarded any of our funding. So part 1 is the citation, citing the grant. So just acknowledging the CTSI's funding source in the appropriate sections of your publication. I have some example language on the next slide just for posterity's sake, but it's also available on our website. I just thought it should live here as well. And then part 2, submit. This is the part that corresponds with public access policy. So we ask that authors must submit their author accepted manuscript into the NIH manuscript submission system, kind of a mouthful, NIHMS, which then that's kind of the pathway to getting your paper uploaded into PubMed Central. Once it goes through that process, it'll spit out something called a PMCID, very different from a PMID. We need that PMCID to be compliant. And then the PMCID links to the full text papers in PubMed Central. PMID links to the abstracts and what is available, or the full thing if it's available in PubMed. PMIDs have nothing to do with the NIH public access policy. We need that C in there in that acronym. Okay, so this is the sample language that's on our website. So when you're citing the grant, if you've used our services, we just ask that something like this goes inside of the appropriate places in your publication. And we have different award numbers available. I have a link to the CTSI's homepage where you can see the different award numbers that are applicable depending on which services or awards correspond to your needs. And then now we're moving into the public access policy portion of this. So this is the original public access policy here. I mean, obviously not the whole thing, but this is what it was back when so the public access policy came about in 2008. It essentially said that all investigators funded by the NIH submit or have submitted those publications into PubMed Central. But originally, they had to be made publicly available no later than 12 months after the official date of publication. So that is a 12-month embargo period where the publication journal had kind of exclusivity rights for up to a year before the NIH mandated that it needed to be available freely to everyone. What changed this year, as of July 1st, All manuscripts accepted for publication on or after July 1st must be made available immediately upon publication. So that's not, we'll get more into the details of that. Actually, this next slide kind of sums it up nicely. So the update is effective for manuscripts accepted for publication on or after July 1st, 2025. So those are the publications moving forward that need to comply with this new no embargo period rule. And it requires your publication to be available in PubMed Central right when it's available on the journal's website. So that's kind of the timeline, and there's a little bit of nuance in the verbiage there. And so if there's questions about it at the end, I'm happy to go over it again. We at the CTSI just want to continue to educate and advocate for complete compliance with the public access policy for everyone that we serve here. And as mentioned earlier, the current federal government landscape combined with this public access policy change, it resulted in a more swift public access deadline. It can be really tricky. And so we want to make sure that we are taking a proactive approach towards compliance with the public access policy. So I want to note that we have a couple of different audiences here when talking about a proactive approach towards public access compliance. So first, I'll address the cores and service providers that might be here in this meeting. So when thinking from the perspective of the service providers, we want to make sure that we are clear with our investigators about the need for immediate deposit of the resulting manuscript into PubMed Central and ensure that they are planning on publishing with a journal that can honor this compliance. As you can imagine, journals may be a little bit hesitant to give up their exclusivity to the publication, which is kind of what we've been waiting and watching for over the last 6 months since this rolled out. As it stands right now, there's not a blanket policy or route for how we have each core disclose this contingency to their potential investigators that want to contract services. But I think there's definitely room and time for a discussion on how that might look in the very near future. We've already been talking with some of the cores for how to address this smoothly and transparently. Clarity is kindness. We want to make sure that we, at the cores and service level, are letting our potential investigators that we're working with know what will be required of them upfront before they contract with us, because then, we have to retroactively, it can get a little messy. For investigators, we advise the following routes when considering how to ensure your publications can comply with the public access policy. And again, this is proactive. This is for those who are kind of in that stage where they're trying to figure out who they're going to publish with. So they haven't already agreed to a publication or a journal commitment. Let's see. So the first one, published with an established NIH compliant journal. That seems like a huge no-brainer. There's a couple different ways to get your that your publication can get uploaded into PubMed Central. And I'll have our health sciences library expert, Christy Jarvis, talk about those in a minute. But yeah, the first route, just publish with a journal that already boasts their compliance with the NIH and public access policy. I have hyperlinked in the slides here and also just the actual URL at the bottom. But the NIH actually has a complete list of journals that have current and established relationships with the NIH and that will comply. We have to make sure it's on the investigator to ensure that that agreement is active. Like I said, there have been some changes. Some journals have been dropping off that list over the last 6 months. Some have been changing their policy slightly, so it's best to confirm their active agreement status with the journal before pursuing the contract. But this list is super helpful in getting that started. Second route that we recommend, if your desired journal cannot comply with public access policy, the investigator should then start thinking about using startup or discretionary funds to cover the cost of open access publishing, or speaking with maybe their department or division leadership to cover the open access publishing fees. Open access can help achieve the same means as far as getting us public access compliant, but they are wildly different, which again, Christy will discuss with us shortly. The library does have a great little resource for typing in different journals and seeing what their current status is with if they have an open access agreement. So they've got some great resources available there. I do want to mention, and this is kind of in the works, but if an investigator reaches a dead end after these steps, CTSI could review requests to cover these fees for publication for those that are related to CTSI resources. And this will be on a case-by-case basis. The investigator would need to submit detailed documentation of why these other avenues weren't possible. The funding is not guaranteed, but we'd love to have a conversation with you about this. So for more information, please email me after to talk about this so we can kind of gauge an interest in this approach. And with that, I'd love to turn the time over to Christy Jarvis, if she's ready to talk a little bit about the difference between open access and public access policy, how they're related, how they're different. It's super good information. So thank you, Christy, for being willing to jump in here.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So many of us, myself included, often interchange the phrases open access and public access, but they are, in fact, very different things. When the Office of Science and Technology Policy back in 2022 told every federal agency that they needed to develop a public access policy that called for no embargo to taxpayer-funded research. Different agencies of different sizes were given different deadlines to come up with their new public access policies. And NIH was first out of the gate. They had a draft of their new public access policy up almost immediately. That initial draft that most of you probably didn't read, their initial draft was a stinker. Guys, it was awful. The initial original NIH public access draft said that if you have funding from the NIH, you must publish in an open access journal. That's what it said. Like that was your only option. And NIH got a lot of pushback from libraries and institutions and researchers that were like, you're telling me that the only place I can publish is in an open access journal and pay an APC? No. And to their credit, NIH walked back that requirement. They no longer require, NIH does not say, thou shalt publish in an open access journal or an open access article in a hybrid journal. Open access, just to be very clear, is a method of publishing. It requires the payment of a APC, an article processing charge, to the publisher, and the result of that transaction is that the article is made available without a paywall on the publisher's website. That's what open access publishing accomplishes. On the other hand, public access, which is what NIH cares about, it imagines what's the opportunity for people to access that information. So you could have an article put into the institutional repository. You could host it on your personal website. You could put it on a billboard on I-15. You have now made it publicly accessible, regardless of what method was used for how you chose to publish it, whether you published it behind a paywall or you published it open access. So the takeaway from this is NIH does not mandate, they do not absolutely require that you publish an open access article. The only thing they require is that you make it publicly accessible in PubMed Central. And although I hate this metaphor, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to ensure that you comply with the public access piece of getting your articles into PubMed Central. If you want to move to the next slide, Annelise. So keeping in mind, again, your goal, right? The shiny gold ring that you have to grab onto is, did I get this into PubMed Central? So there's two main routes to that endpoint. The first one, and Annelise mentioned this, is that the publisher of your article will automatically direct or automatically deposit the final version of the article directly into PubMed Central. Now, there aren't that many publishers and journals that do that. And that's not because they don't want to be helpful to you and other authors. There aren't that many journals that automatically deposit directly into PubMed Central because NLM, which manages the PubMed Central database, has certain criteria um, before they will accept an article into their database. If they let anyone just dump in PDFs and stuff like that, PubMed Central would become the equivalent of the junk drawer in my kitchen. It would not be very user friendly, right? So there are certain journals that have agreements with PubMed Central, where PubMed Central has said, you know what, Journal of blah, 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 the format of your final published article meets all of our criteria. It's machine readable, it's accessible to the blind and visually impaired, and all of the various things that have to be available or applicable to content. And so if a journal contacts PubMed Central, the NLM, and says, please review, please evaluate how we publish our final articles. Does it meet your standards? And if NLM says yes, then that journal becomes one of the ones that has an agreement to automatically direct the final article directly into PubMed Central. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, go directly into PubMed Central. And so there are some journals that will do that. So that can be one of your routes for compliance. If you are publishing an article with a journal that will automatically deposit the final version of the article directly into PubMed Central, you may be done, right? Under the old policy where you had a 12-month embargo, there were lots of journals that had the ability, well, not lots, a sizable number of journals that could automatically deposit your final article into PubMed Central, and then they would set it to release after that 12-month embargo. And that helped you comply with the NIH old public access policy. There are very few journals right now that are set up to automatically deposit into PubMed Central without that embargo. They just have, the publishers have just not yet changed their internal workflows to have that be an option. So if you are publishing with a journal that says, oh, we automatically deposit into PubMed Central, it's your responsibility as an author to figure out when. When will you do that for me? And if they say they will do it immediately with no embargo, then they will help you comply. But just be aware that not too many journals are currently set up to do that. But that is one possible route, right? That the journal will automatically deposit it directly into PubMed Central for you. This route is best for authors who are publishing in journals that already do this for you. And that is likely to require publishing open access with that journal. Again, NIH doesn't care if you publish open access, but that journal that you're publishing in may say the only way you can comply with NIH if you publish with me is if you pay an APC. So just be aware that that is a route that may require open access publishing as the method that you choose to be able to get into PubMed Central. And go ahead to the next slide, Annelise. The other option, and this is the option that NIH spells out in the actual policy itself. If you ever can't fall asleep at night, I recommend reading the policy. The policy talks about putting your author-accepted manuscript into PubMed Central. That route is an option for you. It's best for you if you are publishing in a journal that does not automatically deposit non-embargoed directly into PubMed Central, but that does allow you to retain the rights to your author-accepted manuscript so you can do it yourself. Now, you're probably guessing that the reason I am stressing that is that because not all journals will allow you to retain the rights to your author-accepted manuscript to self-deposit. So be aware that most of the for-profit publishers that you're familiar with, Wiley, Elsevier, Springer, Nature, Taylor and Francis, those for-profit publishers pretty much across the board have said, unless you publish an open access article, you don't get to keep the rights to your author-accepted manuscript. If you publish your article behind a paywall, you sign a publishing agreement. It's usually a click-through agreement with a publisher where you're giving over your rights. So you no longer have the right to your author-accepted manuscript, so you can't put it into PubMed Central yourself. So it matters what journal you are publishing with. And I will pop two quick links into chat that I am sort of recommending that you maybe highlight. This first link is to a tool that Annelise mentioned where you can look up journals with whom the University of Utah has agreements to cover the APC in that journal, meaning that if you publish an open access article in that journal, an APC will have to be paid, but you won't necessarily have to pay it. You or your grant or your department, there's already an agreement in place with the university libraries to cover the APC. So that is a list of some of the publishers for you to be aware of, that there are funded open access publishing options for you. Okay, so then I talked about the other route to compliance is that you deposit your author accepted manuscript into PubMed Central, but you have to be publishing with a journal that allows you to retain the rights to your author accepted manuscript so that you can do that. Luckily, there are some publishers, not the oh, I don't know if I should use the word greedy, but I'll use it. Not the greedy for-profit ones, but there is a decent number of publishers. I'm trying to put this message in chat. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so that second link will open a list of publishers, and you will notice that there's a lot of society publishers. But these are publishers that you can publish with and not have to pay any APC. You can publish your article the traditional route, publish it behind a paywall, and these publishers allow you to retain the rights to your author accepted manuscript so you can take the steps to get it into PubMed Central yourself. So there are some non-APC required routes to be able to comply with NIH. So those are just some tools for you to be aware of, some resources. And then the other big resource that I will just throw out there is that navigating scholarly publishing is really complicated, and you don't have to do it by yourself. No one expects you to be an expert in scholarly publishing. That's why there are people like me and my colleagues in the library who do this for a living, that you can always reach out to and say, I have this manuscript. Help me figure out what routes are available to me to comply with the NIH public access policy. And I think if you go to the next slide, for those of you that have never had to worry about getting your own author accepted manuscript into PubMed Central, you use the NIH portal for that. And I think Annelise is going to show some details about how that works.
Yes, thank you so much, Christy. She is a wealth of information. I don't want to just open up your inbox to the masses, but anytime I've emailed her about any question regarding open access or public access, she is on it and just provides great resources. So thank you so much for being willing to hop in here to talk about the different routes or pathways towards compliance. And I do want to reiterate to please double check with your with who you're going to be publishing with. If they are on that list saying that they do publish in PubMed Central, please take Christy's advice and message them directly and ensure that it is an active agreement with no embargo period. That will keep everyone nice and safe. I see a hand is raised. John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you for that. So just quick question. I looked at that website and it looks like JAMA and the associated journals are covered. I did see like I think about the top journals. You have Lancet, JAMA, New England. Lancet is, I believe, Elsevier, so I think that would technically be covered, but I didn't. Elsevier is not.
Okay, so a couple things. That list, like when you said AACR and JAMA, they are not covered in that if you publish an open access article in JAMA, the university will not cover the APC, right? But
Mhm.
you can publish an article in JAMA and the JAMA network journals and publish it the traditional route, meaning it'll still be behind a paywall on the publisher's website. But JAMA lets you keep the rights to your author accepted manuscript so you could still get it into PubMed Central to make it available publicly to comply with NIH. So it's not a covered journal for open access publishing, but it's an available journal for NIH compliance, regardless of open access versus
Got it.
traditional.
So then among the top ones, it sounds like JAMA is the only one where I can probably retain my rights to publish it myself, but New England and Lancet probably are they you sign the rights away?
Okay, I'm going to give everyone really bad news about the New England Journal of Medicine. Right now, there is no possible route for you to publish in the New England Journal of Medicine and comply with NIH. And that is because the New England Journal of Medicine is a subscription only journal. They don't have an open access publishing option. The only thing they offer is that you publish behind a paywall. And then they make everything they publish freely available after 6 months. But they do not allow you when you publish your, first of all, amazing if you get your manuscript accepted, right? Like incredible, but you have to sign over your copyrights and your author accepted manuscript to New England, and they have exclusive rights to 6 months. There is no way to publish in New England and comply with NIH. The same thing is true, like there are a number of the Nature Reviews titles are all subscription only journals. There's no open access publishing option, so there's no way to comply. If the top journals in your field are published by Taylor and Francis, for example, or Springer Nature, right now, those are among the for-profit publishers where the only route to comply with NIH with them is to publish an open access article. That's the only way they let you retain your rights. And Taylor and Francis, Springer Nature, the university does not currently have any open access agreements with them to cover the APCs. We do have ones with Wiley, with Elsevier, but the Elsevier agreement does not include the Cell Press titles or Lancet.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. This is kind of one of the last slides here, so I can wrap this up before we get to questions. So when talking about this second route, where the author submits into NIHMS, it sounds super daunting. It sounds not fun. It sounds long and drawn out. I just want to kind of just make it publicly known. It's actually a very quick and simple process. I have it listed out here. This is directly from the NIHMS website. It's a six-step process, and I think only three of them require any action from the author. So the first part is just depositing the files themselves into NIHMS. Really, anyone could do this because you're going to assign a reviewer. What I mean by that is you can have a research assistant or a study coordinator or anyone deposit the files and make that initial deposit as long as they are the original files, not just a PDF version downloaded from your publisher's website. We need the actual manuscript and any figures that go along with it. Those get deposited. That person then assigns either themselves or an author as the reviewer, who then gets an email saying, yes, I approve this. I want this to continue to go through to the NIHMS conversion process. That's where someone on the NIHMS side reviews it, make sure nothing's missing. If they have any questions about it or think that, I don't know, there's something missing or want to double check the formatting before getting it going, they'd reach back out to you to clear that up. That moves on to step 4. Once they show you how it's going to look on PubMed Central, it then goes back to the reviewer or the author for a final approval. And at that point, you're done. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay between a PMC ID getting assigned and the actual final approval process. And then you designate when it's available in PMC, or rather, if once it's available on your journal's site, it'll then be available in PMC. So it's a super easy process to get compliant. At some point, or I was thinking about doing a possible demonstration during this meeting, but then I found a really helpful link from NIHMS with tutorials on how to get this done, which brings me to my last slide here. Just a lot of just all of the links or hyperlinks that have been throughout this presentation I've put here, including the one right in the middle, just a NIH manuscript system tutorial. That link just has a plethora of information if you are going to go that second route. If you are going to be the one making sure that compliance is happening and you are the one going into NIHMS to make sure it's going in to PubMed Central, those tutorials are great. I will also make sure to add Christie's helpful links that she put in this meeting on this page before I send out a final copy of this presentation to everyone. And then this last link there right now, it's called Authors Alliance Public Access Policy Q&A. That is just the most, it's not the most up to date because it was, I think the last iteration or update was over the summer. But when all of these changes were happening around the public access policy and who it applies to, who this new time frame applies to with the July 1st, and date of publication versus if it's the date of acceptance. All of that nuance gets answered in detail in this Q&A page that I found very helpful. So I'll make sure to have this updated with Christie's. And that brings us to the end here. I want to know if anyone has any questions at all. I'm happy to answer. Christy's happy to answer. How do I go back and see you guys? Okay.
I think if you shut your presentation down, you should be able to see.
I know I feel bad shutting it down though, because then I'm scared I won't be able to get it back up. I'm not on my I'm not on my normal desktop setup. I think I did find a way to see you guys though,
Good.
while it's still going. Okay. If there's no questions, I am happy to give. Sorry, did someone come off mute?
Yes, sorry, I do have a question.
Hi, yeah.
Hi, so I just want to clarify something with the slide that was what constitutes use of CTSI.
Yes.
Just to verify, if they are using any of those services, does that mean that they are using NIH funding? Like, for example, if they're using Encore for data of like IITs, then that's essentially they're using NIH funding, even though they're like privately funded otherwise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're using like Epic, it sounds like at all, even just for like research notes.
No, that's not true.
Yeah. No, sorry,
Yeah.
Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, so there is some nuance. If you have specific questions about your project, feel free to reach out to the CTSI help desk and we can help you determine. But yeah, if you're just using Epic, and Epic data, that's not part of the CTSI. If you're using some of the specific Epic research modules and that sort of thing, it may be applicable. So we can review your specific case.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, Encore, RedCap, everything, any use of those is technically considered UT or use of CTSI services and NIH funding.
Yeah, and it's because the NIH, subsidizes all the personnel, or not subsidizes, funds all the personnel that put all of those resources, maintain them, et cetera. So.
All right, perfect. Thanks for clarifying.
Yes, no, great question. Thank you, Ashley, for jumping in. I see Evan has their hand raised.
Hello, my name is Evan Goldstein. Thank you very much for the really informative presentation. I was hoping to get a little bit of clarity on a question I had come up, and then also a publisher I think had gotten tripped up with my question too. Could we clarify whether, say, we find a journal that is compliant and we're able to submit our author accepted manuscript to PubMed Central? Do we need to do that upon acceptance for publication, or just when the final paper has been published? And I think like sort of a related question is, if we are if we have a paper accepted for publication in a compliant journal and it's published online ahead of print, but not necessarily the paper has not yet been assigned to a like a set issue or volume and issue. But are we allowed to wait until, even though the paper has been published, quote unquote, published online ahead of print, but hasn't been assigned to an issue, say in print or online, are we allowed to wait to submit our author accepted manuscript, or is the journal allowed to wait until they submit the final published version to PubMed Central? So I guess I'm getting kind of tripped up on two things. One is the timing of when we need to submit. Is it when the paper is accepted for publication versus when it's officially published? That's kind of one aspect. And then the second aspect is do are we allowed to, is the journal allowed to wait if they're accepting the paper to PubMed Central until they've assigned it to an issue rather than just publishing it online ahead of print? And that might be confusing. I can clarify if so.
Nope. Okay. So you're not the first and you won't be the last person to ask this.
Yeah.
And in the NIH FAQs, they have given some hints about this. I wish they would just issue it as a notice, but it's sort of buried in the FAQs. Okay, if you are going to follow the route, the NIH public access compliance route, which is the publisher is depositing the final published article directly into PubMed. They can do that when the issue, like when the article publishes. Okay. If you're following the route where you are responsible for getting your author accepted manuscript into PubMed Central, the policy says that you start that process when you get notification of the acceptance. So if you get your email, congratulations, your article, blah, 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 will be published in the Journal of XYZ, and it will be part of our special spring 2026 issue, right? You've been notified that your article has been accepted. You need to start the author accepted manuscript deposit into PubMed Central at that point. And again, when I say deposit into PubMed Central, it's you upload it into the NIHMS system to start. When you upload your author accepted manuscript and the accompanying files into NIHMS, you get an NIHMS ID number with a date stamp, right? And that is your proof of compliance, right? That you started the process of getting your author accepted manuscript into PubMed Central as soon as you were notified that it had been accepted. In the old days before this new policy, once you started the NIHMS submission process, honestly, your article would appear in PubMed Central generally within a couple of days. I can tell you that with this new policy, the volume of articles going through the NIHMS system has exploded, and then the government shut down for a while. So there's kind of a backlog. So it's taking a while for submissions through the NIHMS system to actually make it into PubMed Central. And NIH is aware that you have no control over that. If it takes NIHMS 2 or 3 months to get your article into PubMed Central, they're not going to penalize you if you started the process as soon as you were notified that it was accepted. And so that manuscript acceptance date and how that aligns with your NIHMS ID number and your NIHMS ID number, you can add it to your My Bibliography and NCBI to show compliance. And NIH will accept that for up to, I think, 3 months as you were compliant. You started the process. So, two things for the publishers that have agreements to put the final thing directly into PubMed Central because it meets PMC's requirements, they can do it with the final published version. You, if you're going to get it into PubMed Central using your author accepted manuscript, you have to respond or start that process when you are notified of acceptance. Did that kind of?
That is perfect. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes, I'm writing that. I'm writing this down, and that's very helpful. Thank you. You're
Yeah.
amazing. I appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Yep. And I'm just gonna, you didn't ask this, but I'm gonna add an addendum. So when I said that there are some publishers that have NLM's blessing to put their stuff directly into PubMed Central, there are other publishers that don't have that, right? Because their final published article doesn't meet NLM's requirements. But there are publishers that have said to support our NIH funded our NIH funded authors, we will take your AAM and put it into NIHMS for you. Like we can't put it directly into PubMed Central for you, but we'll put it into NIHMS. So you might find yourself having submitted a manuscript and then getting an email, 3 weeks later saying you need to approve this before it goes into PubMed Central. And you don't even realize that what the publisher has done is they've started the PubMed Central deposit process for you, but they can't do it directly. They have to go the NIHMS route. So just an additional thing that you may encounter.
Perfect. Thank you, Evan, for the question, and Christy for the explanation. I also want to add that I've noticed that as I've assisted investigators in the past when uploading into NIHMS, sometimes when they put in, if this is retroactive, they already have a PMID, it's already published. Sometimes when they put in that PMID to populate their publication, they will get a notification that comes up that says, stop here. The journal that you have published with has an active agreement that will publish on your behalf. I am not sure how accurate that is anymore, just because I'm not sure if that journal is still willing to forego the embargo period. So that's where I've suggested to have authors go in, and talk to their contact with their publishing journal to verify this. And they can take a screenshot, just send it to the journal, say like, "Hey, I'm trying to be compliant. I have NIH funding. What's the status of embargo period, no embargo period?" And that's the conversation typically goes between them at that point. But that's again just something you might encounter. I saw a hand and then it disappeared. I don't know if they want to come back.
Yeah, this is Christy Carlston. I think Christy answered my question though, so I'm gonna just kind of think through it, and hopefully it's okay if I email you if I really don't understand.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Christy Jarvis is just absolutely on it. Yes, email her. She's the best. Okay. Any other questions at this point?
I'll just throw out there that um, for those of you that don't know the backstory for this, when NIH issued its first, and I said totally crappy version of their public access policy, right? And they went through revisions. When they published their final public access policy in 2024, that policy was set to go into effect on December 31st, 2025,
That's
which
right.
you will notice is still in the future. And so those of us in academia who kind of follow this had that deadline on our mental radars, like, oh, at the end of 2025, there's going to be this big shift. Um, I can't remember now, it was either April 30th or May 1st, the new NIH director came out and said, we don't need to wait until December 31st. We're going to go live on July 1st. So everyone in academia has been scrambling to catch up, right? Just so you know, and I'm not asking anyone to shed any tears for them, but the entire journal publishing industry was also assuming they had until December 2025 to figure out how this was going to work for them. So when this went live on July 1st, publishers were not ready. And quite frankly, many of them still aren't ready they haven't figured out yet what their path is going to be to help authors comply if they choose to even go that route. And so part of what makes things very challenging to navigate right now is that individual publishers and individual journals within those publishers are modifying their own editorial policies on the fly, right? And so, like, if I were to give you a list today of here's all of the journals you could publish with that are compliant, in 24 hours, that list could become obsolete. There are 40,000, give or take, current peer-reviewed English language journals in biomedicine, and they're all scrambling and figuring out what they're going to do. So I think just trying to convey that it's still a shifting landscape. So don't assume that a journal that you published with 6 weeks ago is still in a space to help you comply. So don't feel like I don't know, you're not competent to be able to navigate this yourself. It is super complicated, and unless you spend an awful lot of dedicated time tracking it, it's going to be challenging. So I encourage people, please share your manuscript, share your grant letter, reach out to the library and say, give me some pointers. Where should I start thinking about who are the good guys right now in this space? Who is going to help me be able to publish in a manner that complies with the NIH public access policy? So I don't know. NIH when they accelerated the implementation, they sort of like pulled the pin on the grenade and then walked away and said, "Good luck, everyone." And publishers, because this aspect of complying with NIH relies on you publishing, right? This is not a thing you can do on your own. It matters how you publish, and so publishers have to support your process to comply, and a lot of them are still scrambling. So in the interim, a year from now, we'll all have this down. We'll know what we're doing. It'll be easy to navigate, and we'll look back on this and be like, oh, glad we made it through that. But in the meantime, just reach out and ask for help and seriously, don't be shy. Don't hesitate.
I'm absolutely knocking on wood that in a year from now, we can all just relax and there will just be a normal system in place. But um, yeah, we're all in this together, figuring this out. Even when prepping for this meeting, I was constantly double checking everything as I was putting it on the slide just to see if there's been any updates or changes because you just never know
Yeah.
what's coming up, what's being put out. So
For those that have been in this space for a long time, when the NIH issued their first public access policy back in 2008, and then in 2013, NSF and DOE and a lot of the other large agencies came online. In 2013, the journal publishing industry went through a crisis where they were like, wait, we have to give away after 12 months the thing that we pay for. And they were not really willing partners in this space, but they came around, right? And since about 2008, publishers have had a process that many of you, I'm sure, have taken advantage of or engaged with, where publishers said, okay, fine, we'll help you get this into PubMed Central after the 12-month embargo. And they eventually figured it out, right? So for those of you that remember, 2008 seems like centuries ago to me, but there was a similar, it wasn't quite as frantic as it is right now, but there was a similar shifting and realigning how publishers helped federally funded authors comply. And they eventually figured it out. And for the last decade, things have been relatively calm, right? Everyone knew what they were doing. And I'm hopeful. I have to be hopeful to keep my sanity. I'm hopeful that 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be in that same place where this, for all of us, will just be wash, rinse, repeat. We'll know what we're doing. Um, but but for now, we're just
welcome
white
to,
knuckling through it. Hang
yes,
on tight, everyone. We'll get through it.
welcome to the chaos with all of us. I do want to point out Ashley just put in the chat with Encore. Ashley, did you want to speak on that really quick?
Yeah, I just got confirmation. If the only thing your study is using is registration and Encore, that does not need to cite the grant. Encore is a compliance tool. Often there's clinical trials, that are, going in there to make sure that we're billing appropriate, the study appropriately, et cetera. Those do not need to cite the grant, but any core service, REDCap and open specimen, those we do ask people to cite the grant. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
I just want to say big thank you to Annelise and Christy today for providing all of this great guidance. As Director of Operations for the CTSI, I know this is in somewhat a burden. I'll emphasize, go back to the openings, slides that, this is good for science, I think, at the end of the day. So hopefully it is a win in that regard. And the team is here to help. We don't want this to be a barrier to you and your research. So thank you, everyone.